Following the astronomical rise in the prices of drugs in Nigeria, we started last year with the exit of GlaxoSmithKline GSK Consumer Nigeria PLC, the second biggest drug producer in Nigeria. Muhammad Pate, the coordinating Minister of Health and Social Welfare, has said that President Bola Tinubu will soon issue an executive order to address the rising cost of drugs and pharmaceutical products in Nigeria. Meanwhile, according to the Vice President of the African Healthcare Federation, Claire Omashe, some of the pharmaceutical companies exited the country due to challenges such as foreign exchange, ease of doing business, importation bureaucracy, multiple taxation, and malpractice within the industry. Joining us now on the Morning Show is Professor Cyril Odianose Usifoh, President, Pharmaceutical Society of Nigeria. Professor Usifoh, good morning, and thank you for joining us on the Morning Show.
Good morning, Ruben Abati. Thank you for having me.
Thank you, Prof. Well, very quickly, the state of pharmaceutical practice in Nigeria today. What's your assessment as the president of the PSN? And then this executive order by President Tinubu that is likely to come up to address the cost of drugs. Can the cost of drugs be fixed with an executive order by fiat? Or are there challenges that the Pharmaceutical Society of Nigeria is facing that government can address in other ways?
Like you rightly said, Ruben, the prices of drugs have actually hit the rooftop. And the average Nigerian actually finds it difficult to afford his or her medication. This is particularly true, especially if you have people with debilitating diseases or they have to refill their medicines. And when we talk about people who are cancer patients, diabetic patients, or even hypertensive patients, among others. Apart from that, when we have infectious diseases, treating them, getting antibiotics becomes relatively very expensive. We have actually been discussing with government, particularly with the coordinating Minister of Health and Social Welfare. And on the 1st of February this year, we had an evening out with him where the stakeholders in pharmaceutical environment actually came around to discuss with the minister. And I must say that the meeting was quite fruitful, and we intend to engage the minister again by the end of this month, where we will be able to look at our report cards to know what government have done from our suggestions so far, and also to know what we need to do within ourselves. But one of the things that is topmost is to actually improve and complement government efforts concerning local production of drugs. Government had actually come out with a policy that they want to boost local production. I think if that is properly faced, that would help the average Nigerian, and apart from that, will also be a foreign exchange earner because we'll be the main supplier of authentic medicines to the West African sub-region. However, we are not we are aware of some of the difficulties we have, particularly with energy. People don't have enough electricity to power their equipment to be able to produce. And the cost of diesel is well over 8,500. And in addition, getting foreign exchange to acquire the active pharmaceutical, the ingredients, or what we call APIs, and other things, are also proven very, very difficult. But I'm confident that as government says they would give the president said to give an executive order, we'll work closely with the ministry and see how, when the executive order comes, we'll be able to discuss with the ministry and discuss with other stakeholders in pharmacy. That notwithstanding, I believe we also have issue of capacity. It's no longer news that many pharmacists are leaving the shores of this country, and that some pharmaceutical industries are finding it difficult to employ pharmacists to to man their, experienced ones, of course, to man their industries. I believe working together, not just with government, but with stakeholders and with the Nigerians, also getting feedback from Nigerians will enable us push this particular fund forward to give the best to Nigerians and also the pharmaceutical sector.
All right. Okay, thank you very much. Now, just to ask in terms of beyond the executive order, I hear you when you talk about boosting local production of drugs, and that sounds like a fantastic idea and perhaps in the, a more sustainable approach to dealing with or addressing the issue of high cost of drugs and also even help with exports to the West African corridor. What are some of the things that this administration must put in place to ensure that this becomes a reality? Because we've been talking about this. There's some companies in Nigeria who already manufacture, but there's a lot more that can be done. We haven't yet in any way touched our full potential in this industry. So for this administration, since the body language is that they're quite, looking to strengthen the Pharmaceutical Society of Nigeria and the pharmaceutical industry, what are some of the things they must put in place to ensure that we're able to boost production? I hear you about power, that's across our manufacturing sectors. What are the other things, particular to the pharmaceutical industry?
Like I said, medicine security is very, very paramount, and we hope we won't have another pandemic. And when you don't have medicines, adequate medicines, authentic medicines, as I'll put it, there's going to be crisis. And if somebody is not fit to work, then you know that the workforce will be in problem. Having said that, let me not talk about energy. I believe many pharmaceutical firms, companies are having difficulties securing loans to be able to power their industry as required because of the high cost of production. Now, like I mentioned earlier, that the active pharmaceutical ingredients, the APIs, are virtually not in the country. I know a company like Emzo is starting up one, but we need to fast track this because our population is an advantage to us. And I'm sure we have investors who will want to invest. And I think that's one of the things the coordinating minister is pursuing vigorously. Have good investors who will come and invest in the country and then kickstart the local production and be able to be self-sufficient to a reasonable extent. If we are self-sufficient up to 60 to 70% of our medicines, that would be a mighty, a great goal to achieve. And I hope we can achieve it because we have enough, we have people who are willing to think about, to help in this direction. I must quickly say that together with my past presidents of the Pharmaceutical Society of Nigeria, we brainstormed last Tuesday, and some of these things are things we put forward for the minister by the time we have a meeting at the end of this month. Specifically, we need to have, if possible, the president should be able to have an advisor on pharmaceuticals, on medicine, so that whatever grants or things you have, such person will be endowed to direct the course of how this investment will be done, so that it will not just be an investment done quote and unquote by politicians and the average Nigerian doesn't get what he deserves. I believe government is good and they will definitely listen to such advice. In that way, we would make sure that the investment are properly directed to our needs in the country. Secondly, I think double taxation, like we really mentioned, is something that we need to look at. For pharmaceuticals to be cheap, for medicines to be cheap, we need to lower taxes. We need to give incentive to manufacturers. We also need to give incentives to people who distribute these particular medicines. It's not enough to manufacture a drug. It's not enough to get drugs into this country. But if the drug doesn't get to the final consumer, it could be a problem. If you manufacture at very low prices and you have a lot of middlemen, that could also portend high costs of drugs. I'm confident that by the time we sit together and look at this opportunity, we look at the value chain to make sure that when a drug is produced, a medicine is produced, it gets to the final consumer. And I'm sure NAFDAC is talking about traceability to be able to trace a drug from its production, from its origin, to the final consumer. And then that will be enable us to also stamp out the menace of fake and counterfeit drugs. I have advocated strongly, and I still say it, that the Pharmacy Council and NAFDAC should work together, and just like they did in Kano, and the minister visited recently, be able to stamp out this open drug market. Drugs shouldn't be sold in the open drug. They should be properly controlled by NAFDAC and the Pharmacy Council of Nigeria. I'm sure we are moving in the right direction, but like I strongly said, we probably will need an advisor on pharmaceuticals or medicine for Mr. President. We should be a pharmacist. We should be able to advise where drugs come in and what to do when they come in.
Okay, let's talk about APIs and pharmaceuticals, and that's where I have a big problem with. How can we get the cost down? You're talking about an API factory that just opened, but we know, you and I know the problems in the industry, that you take a loan to set up an API factory, dollar to naira has increased. You have undercut yourself. How are you going to pay back the loan? You and I know what is happening. Then, going further, you are competing with India that has a better balance of scale on the API sector. You know problems are coming as regards what you just mentioned. How can we wriggle our way through this? Because if you don't have any API, you don't have a pharmaceutical industry.
Well, you are right, but if we go to the basics, the petrochemicals that should give us the APIs. So to say, we have the raw material. I'm a professor of pharmaceutical chemistry, and I am confident that if we go to the drawing board and government has the will to set up petrochemicals that will help us produce these fine chemicals, then we'll be a large exporter of APIs out of the country. That's why I said we want to see the executive order, we want to contribute and tell government what to do. I believe strongly to be a money spinner for the country, but most importantly, we must get these petrochemicals that will produce the basic chemicals to enable us get our APIs. That's exactly what India and China did. In fact, some other countries like the United States and even European Union, they import some of their APIs from these countries because of the labor that is cheap there. I'm confident that if we go to the drawing board and we get these petrochemicals that will enable us to do this, it's not rocket science. These are things that can easily be done when appropriate legislation and appropriate orders are given. And I'm sure Nigeria will be on the better side of this. You rightly said, if you set up APIs with manufacturers outside this country and you take a loan in dollars and the rising cost and you have to pay back, the rising cost, interest, and what have you, can even swallow the company that's even starting it, but we hope that won't happen in our case. And I mentioned at the beginning, we have the population. And so even working and making medications, medicines for Nigerians is enough resources to make the pharmaceutical industry work out. The truth is this: if you go to the West African countries that I've traveled a lot, and I must tell you that they rely on Nigeria for their drugs. So Nigeria will be a hub for some of these things we're talking about. But I hope government would come in, and I'm confident they will, so that we can get out of the woods.
Well, Professor Usifoh, many years back, in my other life as a younger journalist, I reviewed a book on pharmacy written by Dr. Fred Adenika. I'm sure you know Dr. Fred Adenika, author of Pharmacy in Nigeria, and at your point, special advisor to Prince Julius Adeluyi, the only pharmacist to have ever been appointed Minister of Health in this country. I don't want to go into the politics of who should be Minister of Health. Pharmacists saying, you know, they are major players in the industry. One of the issues that Dr. Adenika used to talk about is about this cost of drugs that we started with. Many Nigerians, they buy drugs out of pocket spending. And it was partly because of that the Nigerian government set up the NHIS That NHIS has never functioned. Insurance scheme for people is out-of-pocket spending that we still have dominating the health sector. How can we address that? How do we go back to the original idea of making sure that there's state support for people to be able to access drugs? The other challenge is the knowledge deficit in the pharmacy profession. But I don't know, you can address that. I don't want to sit down here and be saying there's knowledge deficit in your profession, but you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah, thank you, Ruben. I would tackle the issue of, it's a known fact that we get most of our drug out of pocket spending, and that is not proper. I got my first degree in Obafemi Awolowo University, did my master's in Britain, and my PhD in Germany. And one of the things I experienced is about the health insurance, but it became very, very obvious and well executed in Germany. As a PhD student, I couldn't register for my courses if I did not register for my health insurance. I had to pay premium every month. Of course, my scholarship people paid that. It was small, but it was a certificate I needed to get. And it's only after that I can register as a student. It was as serious as that. Now, when we talk about health insurance, it's beautiful. It's in Germany, then it's based, or health insurance isn't based on the fact that you make your contributions and you may not necessarily be sick, particularly from the age bracket of 18 to about 60. And by the time you climb 60, when you may be having some issues, those who are working will also contribute. So it's an insurance scheme, which I'm sure I wouldn't want to educate you all here about. But we've not been able to get it right. When we talk about health insurance, we also make sure that the prescriptions from the hospital, or rather from the clinics, get to the pharmacy, so that the pharmacist will be able to dispense the drug, and at the end of the day, you work as a team. Having said that, it's not something that we want to discuss in detail, but we are doing some discussions with the appropriate authorities on that. But I agree with you, it's pertinent that everybody should be insured, should participate in the health insurance. Even those who are probably not with government, they should be able to participate in the health insurance. Pay a little premium, and then you benefit from such type of health insurance. Two, we had the drug revolving fund, which the Honorable Minister is tackling headlong. The drug revolving fund is a fund such as to be able to make medicines available in the hospital at all times. But over a period of time, we've had hiccups with the drug revolving fund. And the Ministry of Health wants to know what the problems are from the various federal health institutions. And after that, they will address it, and I'm sure we'll be able to tackle that issue properly. If you don't have money in your pocket, you may not be able to purchase drugs. And so, if the average Nigerian is poor, then some people may be dying because they are not able to afford their medicines. And so we need to address the issue of poverty. We need to address issues of unemployment. We need to address issues that plague the Nigerian society. It's not only affecting the pharmaceutical sector, but all over. And let's pray and hope as we move forward, we'll be able to engage this problem head-on and overcome them. Talking about knowledge deficit in pharmacy, Dr. Fred Adeneka wrote, no profession will tell you they have everything they want. They always want more. I believe that the pharmacist is well trained, and when they leave this country, they are acclaimed as good ambassadors of this country. However, the academic pharmacists at times don't have some basic equipment to be able to execute research and carry out his teaching activities. And I'm sure that when we are setting up schools of pharmacy, there are some minimum standards that are required, which will be emphasized by the Pharmacy Council. And in addition, we will also believe that the Ministry of Education will be able to come in to assist the various universities set up some of these facilities that are required. I believe they are well set up. The academic pharmacists, the universities can complement the work of NAFDAC, assist in post-market surveillance and to check what sort of drugs we have in the market, and report appropriately to NAFDAC. That notwithstanding, I also don't want to go into the politics of who the Minister of Health, but I believe one thing: whoever the Minister of Health is, like the one we have right now, Honorable Professor Party, works definitely with all strata of people in the health sector, so as to bring dividends of good health delivery system, universal health coverage as well, to the average Nigerian. I think that's what is important. The patient is what we are concerned with, not the individual or whatever it is. If it's a health team, if you have a football team, not necessarily the guy that scored the goal or probably the guy in the goalpost, but to make sure that the team wins. And that's why, as a pharmacist, as the president of Pharmaceutical Society, we advocate that whoever is there work with everybody to make sure that the average Nigerian get the best from the health sector.
All right. Thank you, Professor Usifoh. Very quickly, I'd like to ask you, first of all, is that a number of sub-national leaders, governors, have announced palliatives or subsidies in the area of drugs. I'll use Lagos State as an example. About a week ago or 2 weeks ago, the Lagos State governor announced that for some conditions, chronic conditions, the drugs would be given free of charge. To what extent does this help in terms of talking about this, the high cost of drugs, at least in the interim, whilst we wait for that executive order to be issued by the president? Do you think that this is a good move, and to what extent is it successful? Is this have you seen cases where patients have been able to access drugs for free, or at least at a subsidized cost by support of the government? That's one. Then the other aspect would be around brain drain. Last year at your conference, you'd highlighted the concern that about 7,000 pharmacists in the last 2 years have migrated to other countries, and that poses a big challenge in your industry with regards to having qualified pharmacists, because if you're looking at local production or looking at long-term solutions to ensuring that we're able to bring down the prices of drugs, we must also have the technical expertise in terms of the people to do this. What's the state of things currently? You talked about having an enabling environment for these pharmacists to thrive. Have things changed from the last time you spoke about this? So the first question around subsidies by states, is that successful? Would you advocate for other states to adopt that? And then the second one would be pharmacists migrating.
Yeah, thank you very much. I would subscribe to that, and I would plead with the state governments who are probably not thought about it to have that in their program and see how they can implement it and learn from Lagos State. I commend the Lagos State governor for that gesture. If you may not be able to put subsidy on all drugs. You may not be able to, but there are some specific areas. I mean, if you say for pregnant women, for example, the drugs will be free or 75% free, that would be beautiful. If you say cesarean section is free, that's again wonderful. I subscribe to that, and I think particularly in this present situation in the country, we need to come in to help the average Nigerian get over some issues that they have. We could also say that children who are under 10, when they come to the hospital, they should get their drugs free. That would be another good thing in the right direction. Or maybe students should also do that. But the government will need to look into its purse so as to be able to advise appropriately. States are different, and I'm sure some states are also having such type of program, but I will plead with the other state governors to pursue, so even local governments can come in and assist the average Nigerian in that aspect. That notwithstanding, I'm sure the states governors can also work closely with pharmaceutical industries. If there are some drugs that are being used in the state, they can actually acquire that directly from the pharmaceutical industry so as to bring the price down. There are other means we can actually help bring the price of drugs down. Like I said, if we are able to get the cost of, let's say, the dollar and diesel that most industries use, that will bring down the cost of drugs. To your second question, yes, I said about 7,000 pharmacists have left, and many more have left since then. And you really can't stop any person from leaving. When any person have a conducive environment, most of the time, they will move to that environment. However, we are also beginning to talk to our colleagues, especially our younger ones, on the need to develop this country. I don't know how it is, but I had a job in Chicago when I finished my PhD in '92 in Germany. But I chose to come back home, and I don't regret it. I've been a professor for over 21 years, training pharmacists. And I believe that we cannot help ourselves if we leave altogether. We must be able to look back and develop. I believe if we are able to build up the pharmaceutical sector, then we will begin to become a hub, or rather a country, so that those who have left the country will probably find their way back into the country.
Okay, Prof. I want to talk about research and the synergy between traditional remedies, bringing it to orthodox pharmacy. And I want you to cite this with the COVID-19 case study, where we had some breakthroughs as regards local herbal remedy, but they didn't still come in mainstream to be able to export to the world. And why is it that even our pharmaceutical companies on the stock exchange, we don't have any global pharmaceutical company? Pharmaceutical companies are a big deal all over the world. But why is it that we don't have that global edge in competition? Briefly, Prof, because we need to wrap up soon.
Briefly, most pharmaceutical companies don't have the research and development based here, only a few. Most of their research and development are outside the country, especially for the multinational. And what would you expect if your research and development is not within the country? Then definitely you will focus on what is important to you. And they may not look at some of our herbal remedies that we have here. Some are effective. I mean, I know a professor who had come and then looked at our bitter leaf and even exporting them from the United States because of its effectiveness as a possible anti-diabetic agent. I believe that there are also some things we've done, and taking them out, if you're an academic, there is no way you will have the wherewithal to be able to do that. But I want to say that we are working closely with the industrial sector. 2 products from the academia have actually got into the industry. And in the next couple of weeks, they will be coming out to the market. However, for the COVID-19, we had breakthroughs. We had people who had information. We had people who had things that are actually important, but they will need the collaboration of some of these global or other multinationals to be able to push them out. I believe government can make enduring policy that if you really want to invest in this country, then research and development should be a component. And I think we have, we have people who have the brains who will be able to work. I will just quickly mention one of my colleagues. It's an associate professor, Dr. Margaret Iluamoya, University of Lagos. If you have time, you can check her laboratory and see what she's doing. She won a lot of grants, and she's doing a lot and making Nigerian proud and putting Nigeria in the map
Prof.
on how it's supposed to be in pharmaceuticals. We have other people.
Prof, one other issue that is topical, contemporary, and that will be of interest, the decision by NAFDAC to clamp down on companies that produce these sachet drinks and PET bottles of 200 milliliters and all of that. Now, originally, we were told that there was an agreement with all the stakeholders in the company, in the industry, from PSN to producers of the products and everybody. But all of a sudden, there's a pushback, even by the Manufacturers Association of Nigeria, that says, look, if you stop people from producing these sachet drinks, alcoholic drinks, you destroy a thriving industry. Does the PSN have a position on this, briefly?
Yeah, we got the report. We've not engaged NAFDAC specifically on this matter. I actually asked my secretary to put up a paper, and we would want to not discuss on phone, approach NAFDAC to know their reasons, to know why they made that policy. and probably bring other stakeholders on the table so that we can discuss effectively the pros and cons and how we can get around them. I am confident that by the time that happens, we'll be able to know why some decisions were taken, and NAFDAC will also be able to know what the feelings of the people are, and if there's a need to renege on one or two of the decisions, we will look at them properly. But as at now, we've not engaged NAFDAC and other stakeholders. But I'll put that as a front burner so that we can resolve it as soon as possible.
Well, thank you so much for your time with us this morning, Professor Usifoh. It's been really great just dissecting the issues with you on the morning.